It's the last business day for the week. This is Business Morning. Glad you could join us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwawa. After several months of delay, the Senate finally passed the 2018 budget on Wednesday. President Muhammadu Buhari had presented a budget of 8.612 trillion naira to the Parliament for passage in November 2017, but the National Assembly raised the estimate to 9.12 trillion naira, a 6% increase. Well, let's look at this budget passed by the National Assembly and the recurring delays in the budgeting process. I'm now being joined by an economist and a senior lecturer at the Lagos Business School, Dr. Bungo Adi. Good morning, Dr. Adi. Glad to have you on the program.
Good morning.
Okay, yes, we've seen the budget finally passed, but a lot of Nigerians think this is coming rather too late. What do you think about this recurring budget delays in Nigeria?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a very big problem. It's actually become a very big issue in the past couple of years. I don't know, was it Einstein that said that insanity is doing the same thing the same way, expecting to get different results? So I think passing the budget late is part of the problem. I mean, if we didn't have enough problems with implementation, okay? So it's really a big issue, and some people have actually taken issue with this whole annual budgeting process. Since we know that we will never, work it out, why not change it? What happens, what are we going to trade off if we decide to have maybe a multi-year budget, 3 years, 4 years, since the political tenure is about 4 years? What would happen if we start with something like, we used to have national 5-year plans in this country. So what will happen if we go by having 2 years or 3-year budget cycle rather than this annual ritual that doesn't seem to serve us? But by the way, I think the implementation period for 2017 budget was extended to May this year. So I think they're still
on course.
Yes, they're still on course. So that is not a problem, but I don't think the annual ritual really works for us.
Now, if you would recall, the president had promised that he was going to achieve this 12-month, budgeting process. Looking at how things are done, or looking at the situation, what do you think is responsible for not achieving this?
Of course, it's obvious. The members of parliament, okay, of the two chambers, the lower and the upper house, seem not to be motivated by the same incentive as the president. They don't share the same incentive. Perhaps the president wants to...
When you talk about incentive, what are you...
Well,
what kind of incentive are you talking about?
Because you know what I mean
now?
when I talk about incentive. The president may be committed to national development and progress, but the members of the houses may be motivated by their own personal interest. I know that there has been a time in this country when to get a budget passed, you have to go to the chambers with Ghana must go bags of money.
But
I mean, it has
does
been,
that still
I don't
happen?
know if it but indications seem to hold that it doesn't happen again, and that is what is culminating to these delays. But again, that is one thing. When you also interact with people, senior people in government, you also know that it is just not about passing the budget on time that is just the problem. There is also the bigger problem that what you see written as the budget numbers are not what gets down to business at the end of the day. So we have a problem with the fungibility of the budget. By fungibility, I mean, if you say that you have budgeted 1 naira for a project, is it 1 naira value of project? What is the value that you get? What value for money? Is it equivalent to 1 naira that's been written down? So some people think that you don't get that.
Okay, now that brings us to the figure now. The president had passed about 8.12 trillion, and the National Assembly is coming up with 9.12 trillion. And it appears almost certain that each time the budget goes to the National Assembly, I mean, there's always an addition. Is this a concern to you?
Well, I think they are playing their statutory function, so I don't think it's a big problem. Moreover, we've seen some, some positive development deviance with our revenue profile. Oil price today is $80 per
$80 per
barrel,
barrel.
the first time since 2014. So that's a good omen. And then oil has been quite above the benchmark since this year started. So I think we can understand if they're looking at the revenue, the expected revenue coming in from the government, if they increase the budget. But again, if we look at it, our budget is still significantly lower. Now, we have this, what I call money illusion. When you look at the budget, the way it is written, 9.1 trillion, then that's so big. But if you look at it as, break it down as a percentage of GDP, our budget today is actually lower than what it was in 2008. So that is something that we also need to look at. So we have this money illusion. So if you have the measures of, for instance, liquidity in the system, our financial debt is lowest, compared to the countries that we want to compete against. South Africa, their financial debt is about 442% of their GDP. China is about 300-something% of their GDP. Nigeria's financial debt is less than 20%. That is a cause for concern.